Hi everyone, welcome. I've got my African nightcrawler systems out here on the bench, all ready for their feeding, and I usually come down here with a little green information board with information on it pertaining to the age of the systems, how many times they've been fed, and other things like that. But I think I can remember today's information pretty easily because it consists all of ones and twos. So first of all, the systems are 122 days of age, and it was 12 days ago that we came in here last to feed them, and that was feeding 11. Today's feeding 12. So that was pretty easy. Let's get in here and see how they're coming along. I've got an assortment of different bedding we can use when we get in here. I've got my prepared bedding that I replenished, so it's a completely full box of prepared bedding. Some of the older season stuff already aging quite nicely over here, combined with some of the new stuff should we need to use that much. I don't think we will. I've got some soiled paper towels that I can use down there, and even some nice leafy matter that we could sprinkle out here on the top when we're finished. And I guess as far as bedding goes, part of their feeding is going to consist of a couple days worth of coffee, which includes the coffee filters. So we could even use these old coffee filters as supplemental bedding down in the feeding zones too when we get to feeding. So, from what I remember, the foods they were given last time were the sorts of things that would probably go pretty quick in a worm bin. And with 12 days since then elapsing, I wonder if we're going to see many leftovers. I'm definitely getting the sense that there's a pretty high degree of moisture in here. And the plastic coverings were doing a really nice job keeping the system's moisture locked in. Now I am remembering some of the things that we added. I kind of knew that they wouldn't go right away, because one of the things I'm already starting to catch a little bit of a whiff of is some onion. So I believe it's right there. One of these red onions were placed in here, and I believe each system got one of these. So onion, I believe, typically takes a little while to break down. We had some chunks of cardboard with which we covered up the feeding zone, and the cardboard seems to be holding up pretty nicely as well. Kind of wonder if we were to place that cardboard under the feeding instead of above it, would it stand a chance and be gone? It seems to me like it's been a few check-ins since that cardboard went in, but it continues to persist. I'm starting to see some other leftovers in here of this, that, and the other thing. Like this right here is a banana peel, another one of those things that the worms definitely enjoy, but it is a somewhat tougher fibrous substance that takes them a little bit longer to break down. So that's another thing that you typically see leftovers of. I couldn't really make out exactly what I bought down here, because when I emptied the bag that the stuff was being stored in while it was in my freezer, it collected a great deal of frost. So it's kind of covered, a lot of it was still covered in frost, so I'm not sure what we have there. I'm not sure what we have here either. The texture of it feels like apple. Okay. I thought twice about whether or not I want to lift it up to my face and take a whiff, and I did, but I couldn't really identify the scent of it, even though the onion had a good bit of odor to it. The thing that looks like apple, or felt like apple when I broke it, didn't really have any odor to it. And this is a chunk of lime, which often gives a little bit of a citrusy, fresh scent too. I believe I smelled a little of that too. All those things that we've encountered as leftovers are the sort of things that do typically take a while to break down. The worms will work off whatever they can, like on the banana peel, they'll work off whatever's kind of soft and easy to eat. But then when it comes to the stem and the peel, it is a somewhat slower composting item, that it takes the worms a little bit of effort and time to break down. But I don't worry, it all goes. And even though I find leftovers, especially these types of leftovers, I don't feel like I'm overfeeding, because I just accept that these are the sorts of things that are going to take a little bit more time, and at the present time they're probably not even available to the worms as an available food source. So giving them more stuff, hopefully stuff that they can dig into more quickly, seems like the right way to play it. So we've created a nice opening here in bin number 1 into which we can place today's feeding, and as we venture into bin number 2, I assume we're going to find much more of the same leftover bits of cardboard, maybe some banana peel, maybe even half of an apple like we encountered earlier in the other bin, which is exactly what I'm finding here. Interesting. Sometimes apple goes quick, other times it goes really slow. And it looks like we've encountered one of those types of apples here that is a slower going type. And here's the onion. At this point it's almost like taking account of the things that we know what we're going to find in here. But it's not always guaranteed, but in general, you know, when I come down here with stuff, I try to divvy it out evenly so that each system gets a little bit of whatever it is that I bought down here. Alright, I even seem to be finding some other old leftover pieces of paper that seem to be maybe old feeding zone indicators. And here's some banana peel. Good number of worms hanging out down here in the feeding zone. Good bit of moisture down here too, which probably has a lot to do with why the worms are there, in addition to the fact that there's all kinds of yummy foods there for them too. So, I believe we've managed to make pretty quick work out of getting bin 2 ready for today's feeding. I usually try to size up what's going on in the first of 2 systems, and then when I get to the second system I kind of do what we did here, go about it from the point of view of, you know, already sort of knowing what to expect, and as long as things do kind of line up to what I'm expecting to see, I just keep moving on. So let's see, we had a couple paper towels to get rid of. So we'll start out by dropping them in. And I set the old feeding zone indicators off to the side. So before I forget to grab those, let's bring them in as well. So now we've got a whole bunch of lovely paper into which we can plop the feeding. And as you can see, there is a good bit of frost over here. A little bit difficult to identify what we got going on here, but I believe a good portion of what I see here is probably pear. I think I saw some leek onions too. Let's not forget the leftovers. Let's make sure that all comes back in as well. Alrighty. Onion, apple, banana peels. And we had some cardboard chunks. Do we get the cardboard chunks under the food instead of on top of? It seems like by being on top, they didn't really get that much action, so perhaps by being below the foods, or at this point nested in between portions of the food that we've already dropped in, maybe we'll finally see some movement. So here we've got the core of a pepper, and I'm not sure if we've got more than one of those. This is perhaps a chunk of cauliflower stem. All this stuff is still quite frosty and a little bit difficult to identify, and once it all goes in, it sometimes seems like that's all they get. It seems like there was more just from the weight of it when I, you know, brought it down here. But we don't have to go overboard and overfeed. I think what we've given them here is a pretty nice amount. And you know, with the paper towels and old feeding zone indicators going in under the feeding, it did feel to me like adding a whole lot more was almost unnecessary, but since it's here, let's just go for it anyway. Let's just at least sprinkle a little bit of our prepared bedding in on top of what we just fed, because you can never go wrong by adding what might seem to be too much bedding, because even though it might seem like too much bedding, it probably isn't. Alright, so let's see, I dropped a few chunks, and I've also got my grit here. The grit that I use is pulverized eggshell. So that looks pretty good. And I believe that that's going to be our feeding. So before we lay in the feeding zone indicators to show where we last fed, let's use this as an opportunity to check the outer edges. Since we want to cover up the feeding zone, we could at the same time bring in material from the outer edges, aerating it, inspecting it, and also using a little bit of it to get the feeding zone leveled off and covered up. So that looks pretty nice. Let's see what we have out here. More of the same. Looks good. Seems like the moisture level is really nice pretty much everywhere in these systems. That's what I like to see. Alrighty. Let's get bin number 2 leveled off. And then it'll be down to just getting things covered up. Wow, things here feel almost muddy. Or am I just imagining? I mean, it all crumbles nicely, but it does seem to have a fairly high degree of moisture out there. But as long as it's not clumping and getting nasty, I think it's okay to run with it. Kind of makes me wonder if perhaps the repositioning of the plastic covers could be done in a way that perhaps it allows for just a little bit of airflow around the edges, giving the systems a chance to maybe kick off some of this moisture. And, but then again, the worms love it, and at this stage of the game, a high degree of moisture is probably beneficial. So yeah, I think we'll just go back to returning the plastic covers pretty much the way we found them. Nice and thoroughly covering the entire system, locking in what moisture's in there, and letting the worms enjoy it. So I just got in from replenishing my leaf supply. And some people have asked, how do you end up with leaves that are so finely fragmented? So before I put them into this little box here, I grab a handful and then I squeeze it and I press it and I tear at it and I do my best to make sure that all the stems at least are broken, or at least the majority of them. And naturally the leaf fragments too, I want to see them kind of small particle size if possible. And that's my little method for making that happen. And it seems to work well. So what do we got left? Not much. Get the covers back on and we're finished. So that's it now for our now 122-day-old African nightcrawler system. Doing really nice in here. I guess I don't have to go too crazy covering up because it does almost seem like it would be beneficial to let a little bit of air flow in. Hopefully some of these dry leaves we've placed out here on the top surface will suck in some of that moisture as it starts to move around through the system and possibly get caught on the plastic, condensing, dropping back down. Yeah, I think that's going to be nice. The system's going to be really cool when we get back in here with a bunch of really damp leaves. Worms are probably going to appreciate that. So I got a couple things to take care of getting cleaned up, put away. I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before I go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.